This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and today we're in California introducing Crossing Borders, the first volume that chronicles this author's action-packed, adventurous life of a 30-year career of crossing borders with contraband. I'm joined here with the author, James M. Goodrich. Thanks so much for joining us here today, James.
Well, thanks for having me, Gary.
I'm going to start off, let's go back a little bit. Before we discuss one of the many hats that you have worn over the past half a century, share with us, first of all, what life looks like today, right now, past the world of films and concerts that really has allowed you to pursue many other lifelong passions.
Well, there are two areas that certainly, and I have the time now and the inclination, and I do it all legally, and that is skiing and sailing. And so the skiing I do is I'm an instructor. I thought, well, why not get paid for having fun rather than pay to have fun? And I had been teaching sailing since I was a little kid, and I found that if you're a teacher at heart, you can transfer that skill set to just about anything if you know what you're doing. And
Sure.
so my sailing background really helped me connect with students on the slopes. And so I'm an upper level ski instructor in the High Sierra of California. That's what I do in the winters. Then I shift gears in the late spring, and I've been captain of many charter yachts over the years. But and then of course I have over 100,000 log miles racing and delivering sailboats before my arrest, is what we'll get to, I'm sure. But now it's different. It's really great. I was able to reacquire the boat that is featured in book one, Crossing Borders: The Origin Story, and that I reacquired that boat, and it needed some TLC. And so we have spent the last 4 years, we're actually in our fifth year, of restoration of this beautiful Honduras mahogany varnished hulled Kettenberg 38.
Wow.
It's exciting because we are just weeks away from relaunching her again.
That is exciting. And from the sea to the slopes, you've got it covered. And this is obviously going to be a memento that goes along with this book. Jim, your life began really as an award-winning child actor and a sailor. Did growing up in Southern California's surfing culture and being involved in your parents' parrot smuggling business, really at a young age, all seem to be normal for you back then? And yet, as you look back at it, was it anything but maybe normal?
Well, when I look back at it and when I realize that nobody else I've ever met had this background, and I need to really clarify, parents, I would say parent, it was predominantly my mother. As a matter of fact, it was exclusively my mother. And we would infrequently go to Mexico, probably did a dozen trips over the course of 9 years. And we'd bring parrots back, and it initiated with her love of birds, number one, and then her horror at seeing how mistreated they were in some of the stalls that we'd go down and do bargain shopping in Tijuana and just across the border. And that horrified her. And she said, you know what, I'm going to save some birds. And then that, of course, grew into something more. There's a cat lady in every neighborhood, right? Well, in our neighborhood, she was the bird lady, and I became the bird man. I was one of the 7 kids that really glommed onto the love of birds. And so we had birds. Instead of us getting them fixed, getting them healthy and then selling them or donating them to, we ended up having birds all over the place. I loved it. I still love birds.
I would have loved to have interviewed your mom. She sounds like a colorful character. I think that would have been great. At just 14 years old, you secretly obtained a Social Security ID under a false name. What was your motivation for creating such an illusion so early in life, would you say?
I have asked myself that question many times over the years. I don't know what possessed me. I think, I had already been crossing borders for some time, started at 9. So for 5 years, I'd been crossing borders. And there, you get a sort, I don't want to say anti-government, but you get a certain um, attitude towards what you see going on. And I think it must have been just some sort of hedge against an uncertain future. Like you never know when you might have to change your name. And that certainly came in handy fast forward 30 years later.
Wow. I mean, you're not unlike many young men, myself included. You've got some attitude and you really acted upon it. You describe your smuggling career as a fait accompli. Can you first explain how you got started in smuggling? And was there a specific moment when you felt you had fully committed to this path?
Yes, and that actually is described in book 2, which will be out in just a handful of weeks. Um, it There was a point. It was dabbling at first. It was really to help somebody else out. Actually, my bringing my first load of marijuana up from Mexico right after graduation in 1969, it was a win-win-win-win situation. It helped everybody involved, including me, but it wasn't about the money back then. But, all of a sudden I had a budget. I was used to a budget. I had been in Disney movies, had done commercials on television, many stage plays and musicals. I had a budget, but this was tax-free. That was kind of different. Um, and it was there's something that happens when you cross a border that um, nothing else quite does it. It's just the getting away with something is part of it, but it's like, wow, they have all the resources, the entire budget, and all the technology to stop you from what you just did. And it's like it's a rush. And so you get addicted to the adrenaline. And in book 2, I describe that moment of when, wow, I think this is going to be a career.
Wow. And so we're talking, I mean, that we're talking a temptation of that rush. I mean, that's what finally made you skipper that first boatload of weed back in 1969. Like you said, when you cross that border and realize you're going against the bigger person, if you will, going against everything out there that's trying to stop you. When you recall and you think back of that first delivery through many more, why the decision to write a book about your adventures?
Well, first of all, I ended up getting caught. And so I didn't have to have a secret life anymore. One of the secrets to my success in that field for so many decades was that if you didn't need to know, you wouldn't know. I had a need to know basis. I had crew members who understood that loose lips sink ships. And I had a different way of doing it that most people were, the old cocaine cowboys, that whole thing in Miami, it's been highly publicized. Well, I've spent time in prison with many of them and became friends, I guess. Yeah. I mean, we had something in common, but they did it very differently. They used high-speed boats, and I did it by sailing slowly and having my paperwork all in order and understanding the protocol. So if I was pulled over by the Coast Guard, by the time we had radio contact, they understood this guy's a pro. He knows what he's doing, and they didn't board me. I
Wow.
mean, I dodged so many bullets in those 30 years. It's unbelievable. It's a story that needs to be told. And now to answer your other question, I can tell it. I can tell it without fear of pretty much anything of getting,
Wow.
arrested again for it because I led an exemplary life since my release. And yeah, I mean, life is very different now, and I'm enjoying it.
And so you're basically saying your approach was quite different. I mean, even though you had that rush going on in your head, you were calm, cool, collective, even methodical in your approach of how you went about everything. So obviously the higher ups trusted that. They could see that you were a professional. Some of these deliveries, I mean, I imagine required quite a mental and even physical fortitude to survive a passage of that kind of magnitude. Does the book go into detail of your transatlantic crossings with hurricanes and pirates and so much more? Can you kind of touch on that?
That's actually been written. I was advised to keep everything chronological, but I've made a choice recently um, in the preparation of book two, which is a continuation. It is chronological, that I'm going to jump to book five because, and I'm also going to have an introduction in book two that kind of lays out um, a condensed version, say a three-pager sort of thing of my entire career so that people understand. Because if you just read the first book, yeah, it's interesting, it's exciting, it's like, wow, it describes the why and how I got involved initially. The background I had, I ended up becoming a uniquely qualified person to do exactly what I ended up doing for so long. I mean,
I mean,
yeah, you better be a good actor when you're crossing a border because they're looking for you to flinch. Okay. And they know how to ask questions that will throw you. So that was fine. I was playing a part of being someone who had nothing on their boat or nothing in their car or nothing on the airplane. I mean,
it was
and
a perfect combination. I mean, if you ask me, this combination of being an actor, remaining calm, fooling people along the way, and really just have a methodical way of doing things is pretty impressive.
I was just going to say, and also my background in sailing, I started sailing at such a young age. I was already an accomplished sailor. By the
Right.
time I hit my mid-teens, I was a sought-after crew member. Ended
Yeah.
up getting my certification for celestial navigation and my captainship. So I mean, it's just one thing helped the other. Yeah,
With
go
all
ahead.
those unique skills, I mean, I can see how you lasted decades really doing what you did. Eventually, your yacht delivery business evolved to include an import export capacity. How did you balance really the legitimate side of your business with the illicit side? And did one ever put the other at risk, would you say?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm not sure I thought of it that way. It was there were times when I had intended. Remember, you're dealing with Mexico in the 70s and 80s, 90s. Uh, I had intended at times to bring a boat I was delivering and loaded, but because you're dealing with so many things have to meld perfectly down south, or at least to my degree of expectation. And if it didn't, I walk away from it and I would just bring the boat back. So if I did a boat delivery, I got paid for that too. That was fine. And I just love sailing. The my smuggling ended up supporting my sailing and skiing habits. I wasn't trying to, become a godfather or anything. I just had simple loves that and passions that I got to live
I
by
mean,
doing
at,
this.
as people have probably said, your life reads like a book. I mean, what was it like being in the middle of those dangerous situations with helicopters overhead, firefights with campesinos? I mean, that's got to be a rush, quite honestly.
Yeah, that was down in south of Manzanillo, and right at the 101 latitude, longitude, and where it meets the shore, just south of Manzanillo, and that was hairy. But it's interesting. You put a hat on, and when you put the captain's hat on, you become the cap. You are the captain, and you don't have the luxury of being nervous. And you also understand right away if you show nervousness, your crew is going to just break down.
Your writing, I mean, it's filled with adventure, from the thrill of commanding a world record breaking yacht to the agony, really, of being arrested in Australia. Were you surprised you could remember all of these stories when you put pen to paper, especially chronological?
No, because I've always believed, because it's true for me, and I think for most people, no one forgets peak experiences. And when the adrenaline is rushing at that level, you are going to remember that. Or there are people who have no idea what they were doing, but I don't know what their mental state was. I met them in the halls of prisons, and they needed help. But in my case, no, I remember conversations. I don't, not to the point I remember what I had for breakfast on a certain day, or something, but I remember the nuances of, and I have been keeping a log since I was a preteen. So yeah, when you're a sailor, you keep a log, and I did. So.
The bust of your Custom 62 motor yacht was the largest seizure in history, really, on a private yacht, and it led to the downfall of a global network. What was the feeling of realizing that maybe just a small detail, confidential informant mechanic, had really led to your downfall?
On one hand, of course, it was a major disappointment because, in truth, when you have as many back-to-back successes as I had, I attributed it to my brilliance, or I ended up thinking I was fairly untouchable. That I planned things so carefully that and I walked away from many opportunities. The folks that romanced me in South America to do this trip on this vehicle, I spent close to 2 years doing so. And I said, no, you need to find somebody else. I'm not interested. And they kept upping the ante, and not pressure. It was just, they sweetened the pie. And finally I said, okay, I'll do it, but it's the usual thing. I do it my way. I do it at my pace. And they said, okay, good to go. So it was a disappointment to get caught. But on the other hand, knowing, and I didn't know this for weeks into months as the discovery started coming through, that because now I've got a big mark on my back. I've got a big target on my back. I'm the captain, got caught. It's assumed that I'm going to cooperate, but I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't, not at first, because the deal was they were going to, the Colombians and others, were going to come to my rescue. And after weeks, months of them having just disappeared, and then finding out that it was this confidential informant who had overheard a conversation long before I had anything to do with the boat, and that allowed the feds to go to a judge and get get permission every 90 days. It had to be renewed, and it was rubber stamped, to put a sat track device on the boat, because this confidential informant had overheard a conversation between the caretaker of the boat that had nothing to do with the business of the boat. It was a very custom Italian motor yacht. It had false compartments between the hull and the fuel tanks. Okay. So anyway, when I found that out, I went, yes, at least it's on record that it had nothing to do with me. I did everything that could possibly be done right.
Speaking of weighing out your opportunities, some you took, some you turned down. In the final chapters of your smuggling career, you became the golden boy for a major league cartel. How did you establish yourself as a trustworthy and successful partner, considering that maybe you had some failures in the past as well? How were you able to sell them on such a deal?
Telling the truth, just acknowledging that Yeah, okay. I brought 2.5 tons of Moroccan hash across the Atlantic, and we had to throw about half of it overboard just to make it over the shoal to get into Morehead City in Beaufort, North Carolina. And we ended up, by the way, unloading on Coast Guard property. And then doing a commando raid the next night to get so that we could have them take us to a marina and we'd be legit. And then it's just an unbelievable story. But, just telling the truth and showing up.
Yep.
You give your word, you keep your word,
And
and then you have power.
like you said,
Yeah.
you were doing illicit criminal activities, but you were really a businessman, quite honestly, letting them know that mistakes happen and you owned up to them. Jim, lastly, you have testified as the star witness to bring down really a global empire. You have faced former associates probably in court as you cooperated with the authorities. What a life. What a book. I can't wait to see what the next book's all about. Looking back on your life, from your early adventures to your smuggling career and the eventual testimony that brought down our network, do you have any regrets or do you stand by the choices you've made?
No, I stand by them. Without question. Have I made mistakes? Yeah, but I've owned up to them. And that's a lot different than excusing yourself, I think. And I don't deny or alter, edit the past, and I don't intend to do so in the future. It's a different sort of world for me. Having a regular job. Although, note that I wasn't just a smuggler. I'm a workaholic, and I always had a legitimate job. Everything from selling boats. I became a yacht broker. I became a partner in a yacht brokerage in California. Uh, I uh, I had so many different jobs over the years. A snow removal business in Mammoth back in the early '70s. I always had something going on because I also knew concert promoter, movie producer, associate producer. I would find the money and they would close. And on one film, $4.2 million, I raised every penny of it.
Wow.
So, you know,
So, no regrets. Tell the truth. What a story. Viewers, let's take a look at the bottom of the screen right there. What you're going to see is his Amazon page where you can learn more about this author and purchase his book, both in paperback and Kindle download. These chapters take you from a parrot smuggled from Mexico with his own mother to his first boatload of contraband. Once again, that is Crossing Borders, Book 1, Smuggling Contraband Across International Borders. Had to start somewhere. This is Gary Atencio with CNTV. And if you don't know, now you know.